Good evening, all of you. Greetings for the day. कैसे हैं आप सब लोग? Are you ready to dive straight into this amazing one-shot revision of this next chapter of high story, or as you call it, history, the making of a global world? इसके पहले के जो दो chapters है, the rise of nationalism in Europe, chapter 1, and chapter 2, nationalism in India, ये already मैंने पढ़ा दिए हैं. वन शॉट रिवीजन इसी चैनल पे it is done. Make sure you go and watch the recording if you have not attended live. Okay, and now straight away let's dive into this one shot revision of the making of a global world. But before that, I have also conducted some important classes for you to be able to score full marks in social science, including the paper pattern, exam writing guidelines. So make sure you check out this channel and make sure you subscribe to this channel and press the bell icon so that you get regular notifications whenever I come live or I post a video. So this is the mind mapping of this chapter. Let us straight away start. Now, when we talk about global, now see, what is the meaning of global? As you could observe in the first slide of this chapter, sorry, I have a bad throat, so please bear with me. So as you can observe on this slide, the globe. Now, when we talk about globalization, we talk about 1991 onwards, especially India. But that is not the thing when we talk about globalization. There used to be a very vibrant, active, throbbing global trade even in the ancient times. I'm sure you all know about the Harappan civilization, the Mohenjo-daro civilization, and the trade at that time. So this is a real image that you see on your screen right now. This is another real image showing us the entire layout of the smart city. Imagine 8,000, 9,000 years ago, this is the kind of planned city that there existed in our very own country, India. Okay, and it is said that the Britishers came here, and the whole narrative that goes, especially across Europe, is that the Britishers came to India and then they developed India. India was a very backward country. Oh no, absolutely not. Okay, we gave the world medicine. Maharshi Bhagavad, known as the father of medicine. Maharshi Sushrut, known as the father of surgery. Now, they have come up with their own books more than 3,000, 3,500 years ago. So, the whole narrative that goes across Europe is a very flawed narrative. Okay? It is only to satisfy their ego. It is not like that. Oh, I can see all of you live in the chats. Kya baat hai? So, hello Richa, hi Sapna, hello Harshika. I am live with all of you in the chats, okay? And make sure you give a thumbs up to this video. Okay, so I hope you understand that globalization is not something that is a very recent thing, only 50, 60 or 100 years ago. No. As long as, as far as 3000 before Christ era, as you can see in the last point. Okay, there were silk routes. These silk routes that actually connected the entire world. And yes, India was a very important hub of these silk routes. Okay, a lot of goods, especially spices, the woven air as it used to be called, उसको बोलते थे बुना हुआ हवा, यानी कि इतना पतला कपड़ा होता था. It used to be so fine, it used to be so light. It was called woven air, and that was one of the most traded products. Muslin cloth, मलमल बोलते हैं उसको, मलमल in Hindi. So India, China were the two hubs when it came to trade in the ancient times. Not just that, when you talk about globalization, it's not only the products. So from India, several products went to Europe, to Africa, to right to that side, to the western part of the globe, and from there, several goods came here. So globalization can be observed in terms of products. Globalization can also be observed in terms of food, right? Okay, Harshika says, is there class or not? Harshika, I'm live already. Can you see me? If not, please refresh. Quickly refresh, Harshika. If you're not able to see me, quickly refresh. Okay. So spaghetti, it is called in Italy. And you all know that noodles, it is called in China, right? So at that time, maybe somebody from Europe, somebody from Italy may have traveled to China, and there he liked this food. So he brought either the packets back, or maybe he learned how to make it. I'm sure that was how it would have been, because back then it will be several months of water transport traveling, right? Traveling on ship. So that is how it was. So in Italy it's called spaghetti, and China it's called noodle. So it is said that somebody from Italy may have traveled to China and then brought this. And similarly, the story goes for potatoes, for soya, or we call it a soya bean, groundnuts, maize means makai, भुट्टा जो हम लोग खाते हैं ना, tomatoes, chilies, sweet potatoes, and so on and so forth. So, are you observing globalization was there in the ancient times, not only in terms of trade, but also in terms of food? Similarly, the way today it is said that coronavirus was actually, there are several theories, okay? I don't want to name any country. It is said, and there are people who have some evidence to back that as well, that coronavirus is a human made virus, and it was either purposely leaked from the laboratory, or by mistake it leaked from the laboratory while some tests were going on and so forth. Sorry for that. So similarly, not just today, in the ancient times also there were diseases spread from one part of the globe to another part of the globe. Let me give you an example of smallpox. Now smallpox was a very deadly tool used by Spanish rulers. Now, what happened because of smallpox? Now, you know what happens because of COVID, right? Breathlessness, maybe cough and cold, too much of weakness, right? Loss of smell, taste. You know the symptoms, right? And in smallpox, I'll not keep the image of a person suffering from smallpox for more than a few seconds, because it might be disturbing for some of my students, some people who are watching this video. So I request you, if you are very sensitive, you can skip the next few seconds, maybe 15 to 30 seconds. Okay. Now, this is how a person suffering from smallpox looks like. This is the hand actually of a child. And you see these boils, they're very painful boils. That is what happens in smallpox. Is that clear, all of you? The way we have chicken pox and so on and so forth. So, are you understanding how globalization was there even in the pre-modern world? Even thousands of years ago, there was exchange of products. Food from one place was going to food, was becoming food of another place. And you can also see diseases being used as weapons to conquer regions, right, everybody? Sure. This is clear, logically clear. Super. Now let's talk about the 19th century, where globalization formally started in the modern world. Okay. So whenever there is globalization, there is exchange of these three things. There is flow of trade, which means goods, common sense, right? There is flow of labor. People will go and work from one country to another. For example, today I don't think I have to give any example for trade, but still I will. Okay, just observe in your own house the TV, refrigerator. If you have a two-wheeler, four-wheeler, the switches that are installed in your houses, the brands, okay, the mobile phone that you use, the laptop that you use, the fan that you use, all these are not from only Indian businesses. So you will observe globalization in your own house. Fair enough? Super. So trade understood, first point. Second is flow of labor. You will see a lot of people going from one country to another for work, correct? In search of employment. Sorry for that again. I am having hot water already. I've got a bad throat since I think 3 days now. Okay. But to give a practical example of the second point, so many people from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and other developing countries travel to Dubai because of immense development work happening there, immense construction activities happening there. So they require a lot of labor. Migration of labor, understood. Because of globalization, yes. And capital, you will see a lot of foreign companies investing in India, and you will also see a lot of Indian companies investing abroad. That is movement of capital. And the fourth point is not mentioned here in your textbook, but I'd like to mention culture as a byproduct of globalization. You know what is culture? I'll just tell you a very recent example. We are in the month of October, it's almost October end, and today I saw on social media a lot of my friends, a lot of my old students celebrating Halloween in India. What is Halloween? Oh, it's a festival where you dress up in a very dangerous looking manner. You can dress up like a witch. You can dress up like a Dracula with all the pointed teeth. Oh, and that's how they dress up. You see that exchange of culture? Then on birthdays, cake cutting is again, these are all influences of Western culture in India. Clear? So that's a byproduct. Now, if you actually look at this year range that is given here, 1815 to 1914, this 100 years, you look at, you will observe that a major world economy took shape. How? You talk about Britain. In Britain, importing corn, to be precise, was cheaper than actually growing corn there due to several reasons. I'm not going into the details now. But importing, which means from Britain, if you are somebody in Britain, you're a business owner. Okay. So buying corn from outside Britain is cheaper than growing corn in Britain. Are you understanding this? Right? Now, there were different groups. The traders who were buying corn and selling corn, they will like it. But the people who own large lands, the rich farmers, will not like it. Why? Because their income will reduce to almost nothing if Britain stops growing corn. Right, everyone? So what happened is, as and when there were some restrictions, and then uh, corn imports were indirectly stopped by the government by increasing the import duty too much. Right? So that led to production growth in Britain itself. A lot of people from villages came to the towns, the cities, and that way somehow we see corn being grown within Britain. But nobody likes spending more if you can spend less. So in general, the common people and a lot of business owners, the traders, they protested, and finally those rules were removed, they were abolished, and again corn could be imported in Britain. Now when this happened, the thousands of people who were actually working in the fields became jobless almost overnight. Right? Now they will have to find out somewhere to work, and that is where they started moving outside Britain. Are you clear with this? Are you clear with this? And Britain started purchasing corn from Eastern Europe, Russia, America, and Australia. And in these countries, lands were cleared only to grow corn to be sold to Britain. Are you observing a world economy taking shape? Earlier, food would come from a very nearby farmer, or food would come from your own farm. Right? Right. Clear, clear, clear. Earlier, food was never coming from abroad, from another country. So you see that global world economy taking shape. And that is exactly what is mentioned here. Even there is a mention of the the forced British rule in India. Your NCERT loves Britain to a great extent. So you will see a lot of that love reflecting through NCERT, not actually showing how cruel Britain was in India. Okay. So are you getting how the world economy is taking shape? I hope you understood this. Now, when this growth happens, obviously technology will help that. See, all the topics are connected to each other. From one topic, very smoothly, we are actually going into another topic. Right? Super awesome. So, some important technological inventions were railways, yes. Steamships, yes. Telegraph was used for communication. Okay. So, let me just write it so that you will understand better. Telegraph was used for communication. It was a small machine which was present in post offices, and through that machine you could send messages. Okay, and then colonization led to more railways. Now a lot of people say that Britishers benefited India, they made railways. Yes, they did, but they cut our own trees, they destroyed our own forests to make the railways. First, second, they made the railways for their goods, for their people. Common Indians were not allowed to travel. Please understand this. And trains is something that you cannot take away to Britain when you are leaving India. So they had to leave it behind. Otherwise, they would have taken it the way they did with Kohinoor and a lot of other things, including one of the portraits of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, including Vaghanak. Please go to the British Museum and see. You will know what I'm talking about. Our member of parliament, Mr. Shashi Tharoor, he cracked a joke that in Britain they call it the British Museum, in India we call it the Chor Bazaar. And that was funnily true, or rather brutally true. Okay. Now, one example of benefit of technology is that previously, when there was no refrigeration technology, you understand refrigeration, freezer, cold storage, right? When there was no such technology for meat, what would happen is alive animals, जिंदा जानवर ship में रखे जाते थे, and then that ship would go, travel, reach the destination, and in the destination, at the destination, the animals will be slaughtered, killed for meat. Are you understanding this? So from A to B, the animals are going, and at place A, animals are not killed. Animals are killed at place B where consumption will happen. But now with refrigeration technology, what will happen is animals are killed at place A itself, so that when the goods are loaded on the ship, more goods can be loaded. Right? The bones and everything, all the waste parts which are not going to be consumed as meat will be removed much before being sent. I hope it's clear. So that is, and then that is what made meat affordable. Earlier, in a ship, you could accommodate only so many live animals. But now, much more quantity of meat was coming in because of refrigeration technology. Clear, clear? Absolutely clear, all of you? Super awesome. So that is how technology benefited. But there was another dark side also to this colonialism. See, colonialism only benefited the colonizers. Colonialism that happened with India, that was forced on India, it benefited only Britain. India was destroyed for 200 years. I hope you remember Dr. S. Jaishankar ji's statement that, as per research done by Utsa Patnaik ji, who's a very famous economist, Britain took away $45 trillion worth. $45 trillion. Can you imagine that? That means in today's value, to calculate 82 into 45 into 1 and then 14 times 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. This is the wealth that Britain took away from India in the years that it ruled India. Is that clear, all of you? Super. So, India was looted, but Britain flourished. So, you know, researchers say, historians say that Britain was built on the loot of its colonies. So, trade flourished, but that growth was only for the colonizers. For the colonies, it meant destruction. Okay, now similarly, let me show you the condition of Africa. Now, this is a map given in NCRT. Okay, now, if you observe, there were these countries. Okay, you can check Belgium, Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Portuguese, Spanish. 7 countries had actually colonized Africa. Why? Because it is extremely rich in resources, right? Being extremely rich in resources makes it attractive for the colonizers, and that is why they colonized Africa. Is that clear, all of you? Imagine, in spite of being so rich in resources, Africa was reduced to a third world poverty country. Right? So I hope you understood that late 19th century colonialism benefited only the colonizers. For the colonies, it was havoc. It was a complete catastrophe. Okay, so in Africa, now see, colonialism did not happen overnight like this. That these white people went and all the Africans said, okay, okay, we will work for you. No, it did not happen like that. Before colonization happened in Africa, the people in Africa, they were self-sufficient people, right? Tribals were living in the forests. They were managing their survival. And the people who were not the tribals, they had their own farms and they were surviving. They were managing and they were doing pretty well. And if you're doing pretty well, would you work as a laborer? No. That is the reason why. See, please understand. I'm trying to establish links between the topics. And that is the reason why in Africa there was this disease spread, which is a disease that affects cattle and it kills cattle. And that the name of the disease is rinderpest. The way COVID is a disease, right? The way a lot of other flu, viral infection, etc. There are diseases. Similarly, there is another disease called rinderpest, or it's called cattle plague. Now, who brought this? Italian soldiers who were trying to invade Africa from Eritrea. So Italian soldiers, see this is Italy. See that? No, this is not Italy. Italy is here. So Italian soldiers wanted to invade from Eritrea. When they came here, they brought cattle which was already infected by this disease, rinderpest. And then it spread like wildfire. Within just few years, I think it was about 5 years, the rinderpest reached the southernmost part of Africa also. Now, after the cattle is destroyed, the people have no option but to work for the white colonizers. Why? Because the people who were actually doing farming, the African people, the natives who were doing farming, for them, cattle was very important to do farming. Back then, if you talk about the 1800s, 1890s, there were no automated machines, there were no tractors. Farming depended greatly on cattle. And now the cattle was destroyed. So now these people who were rich earlier, after rinderpest was spread by these white Europeans, to be specific, Italians, they were reduced to mere laborers. Clear, everybody? How rinderpest affected? Sure. This is also clear. So I'm just giving you what happens to cattle in rinderpest. There is fever. There are wounds in the mouth. Diarrhea means loose motions. Okay. From eyes, nose, you can see some liquid coming out. Sometimes even blood. Sometimes pus. That is what happens to the poor cattle. So imagine how cruel these white colonizers were. That this is what they did to the cattle. so that they could force the farmers to become laborers. And now, because everywhere there was so much of destruction, people wanted to escape in the hope of a better place to work. Now, take an example of Sri Lanka. So today in Sri Lanka, there is a lot of financial crisis going on. So people from Sri Lanka want to escape Sri Lanka, and they want better opportunities. That is exactly what people thought back then in India. That people wanted to get rid of the British rule, and people tried to become indentured labor. What is indentured labor? It is called contractual labor. Excuse me. It is called contractual labor. Now, what is contractual labor? The person, let's say from UP or Bihar or from Central India, goes to work somewhere else, right? Or maybe some areas of Tamil Nadu, goes and works in the Caribbean islands, mainly Trinidad, Guyana, and Suriname, or Mauritius and Fiji, or maybe even in Ceylon. Ceylon is Sri Lanka. So when they're going there for a few years, they have to work with only one person. So they will be working for only one person. That is how indentured labor works. And agents were there to make people indentured laborers. So plantation owners had hired agents to attract more and more workers. So the agents in India would attract the workers who are unemployed and who say, oh, there is a very nice workplace. You'll get a big house, you'll get a nice salary, blah, blah, blah. At that time, there was no internet to verify. So these poor workers, they were fooled, and sometimes the ones willing, they were obviously fooled. The ones who were less willing were also fooled in the hopes of a better future. And that's how this indentured labor trade worked. Is that clear, all of you? Is that clear, all of you? And this system was opposed. And then finally, in India, it was abolished in 1921. There were so many people that became indentured laborers. I'll just tell you one thing, okay? Do you remember nationalism in India? This chapter, there is this topic in the non-cooperation movement about the peasants of Audh or Awadh in UP. And their leader was Baba Ramchandra. He was one such indentured laborer who went and worked in Fiji, this place. Highlighting it. Right, everybody? Clear, 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 everybody? So, are you understanding how colonialism started, colonization started, it destroyed people, and then people started going somewhere else as indentured laborers in the hopes of a better future, but it did not actually happen that way mostly. Now, there were a lot of Indian entrepreneurs abroad, yes. Indians suffered, yes, but there were some Indians who were extremely rich and they did not suffer. They earned a lot of money. They were the Shikari Puri Shroffs. They were the Nattukottai Chettiars. Okay, and they were the financiers. See, at that time, the concept of bank was very new. So people would trust each other. So they were rich people who would lend money for trade, for business, for agriculture. Okay. So there were definitely some Indian entrepreneurs abroad. And Indian trade, colonialism, and global system. What was the impact of colonialism in India? We spoke about colonialism in Africa, and I think only one point I want to tell that sums up everything, because your NCRT has immense affection and love for Britain, because it will not tell you clearly the cruelty that actually was imposed by the British rule in India. How nicely they have said here, see, in this point, cottons from India were exported to Europe. Now, today, if China is one of the largest exporters in the world, China is rich, right? But with each passing year during the British rule, India became more and more poor. because this was not exported, this was actually robbed. ये बस लूट के लेके जा रहे थे, right? So they took away our raw materials, and with those raw materials they built their industries, they destroyed our industries. I hope you are clear with that. Okay, and then that is how they sold their products here. See, British manufacturers flooded the Indian market. So I hope that's clear to all of you. Yes, absolutely clear, everyone. Super awesome. And now the First World War started. So see, from this 19th century, this is pre-war, okay, that we are talking about. Now the First World War started. Now see, whenever there is a war, the demand for several goods increases suddenly. There is a sudden boom. Am I right? More vehicles are required, more weapons are required, more food, more uniforms for the soldiers, more footwear, maybe tents, and so on and so forth, right? So let us understand how the world economy was during the First World War. Now, wartime transformations. See, when there is a situation like war, when there is an extremely urgent situation like war, obviously a country will not keep doing what it is doing. No, its industries, its businesses will be told to produce goods that will help in war. Am I right? That is exactly what happened in America, in the US. Now, you all know that the World War started in 1914 and the US did not enter the war till 1917. है ना, याद है ना? US ने एंट्री की थी फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर में 1917 में. Now, what was it doing in the first 3 years? It was selling goods to Britain. बहुत पैसा कमाया अमेरिका ने फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर में, राइट? एंड बहुत उधार भी दिया अमेरिका ने ब्रिटेन को. इस तरह से कमाया. Are you understanding this? And it was only later on that the US joined the First World War. So are you understanding this? US became an international creditor. पहले यूएसए की इकोनॉमी काफी खराब हालत में थी और अब काफी अच्छी हालत में हो गई आफ्टर earning so much in the First World War. Now the First World War is over. No country benefits from the war. Please understand this. Even the winning countries have lost thousands and lakhs of its people. Even the winning country has lost so many of its weapons. They have already spent millions and billions on war. Correct? And the destruction, of course, is such that cannot put it in words. The First World War was the first war as such that was, fought using modern weapons. So now after the First World War, there has to be some post-war recovery. Recovery means what? The businesses that have spent millions and billions in the war must now start earning, right? The countries that have spent millions and billions in the war must now start earning. So how did the US try to recover from the war? They did this by mass production and mass consumption. What is mass production? Producing in a large quantity. Now you will tell me, sir, were goods not produced in a large quantity during the First World War and before the First World War? Of course it was produced, but now it is mass produced in a much faster time. See, in the First World War, obviously there were weapons produced on a large scale, but it was a slow process. Correct? Now, what is mass production? I'll tell you. And who started mass production in the US? Who made it more famous? It is Henry Ford of the Ford Motors. And the T model Ford was the first mass produced car of the world. Let me show it to you. He used this technique called assembly line. What is this technique called? Now, in this technique, one worker will keep doing only one activity. So, for example, if I'm highlighting a worker, okay? If this worker is fitting 5 screws, so for every car, this worker will keep fitting only 5 screws. And this worker will not do any other work. Similarly, if this worker is doing a certain work, he will keep doing only that work. Let's say this worker is fitting the tires of each car and only the right, let's say the left side tires. So this worker will only fit the 2 left tires and no other work. So this way what will happen is work will happen very fast. And this assembly line worked wonders. Can you see assembly line? Yes, everybody? Can you all see assembly line? I'm showing you some real pictures so that you understand everything logically. Super. And this was the car. T model Ford. Now you really want to see what mass production actually looked like. You really want to see? Come on. Send me a reply quickly in the chats and I'll show it to you. Come on. And if you are watching this as a recording, make sure you comment. You definitely leave a comment if you are benefiting from this class. So yes, I can see everybody's comments. Wherever your eyes can see, you can see only and only these T model Ford cars. Can you see that, all of you? This is called mass production. Now, if so many cars were being produced, obviously so many cars will be consumed also, right? Will be purchased also. And at that time, there was a system of EMI. Don't pay the full amount now, pay in installments. So, see, understand the circle. Okay, understand the circle. People got jobs, people earned money, and more people got jobs like this because of mass production. So more and more people started earning money. Now these employees want to spend. Now where will they spend? They are spending on these mass produced products, right? Now these sellers are not getting the full amount. Please understand the cycle. So the moment these workers lose their jobs, it will be a tough time for the sellers to recover their money because the workers have no money. They are living on udhar. They are living on credit. And again, there will be a problem. The large quantity of goods they have already produced will have no buyers or will have very less buyers. I hope you're understanding the whole circle. Yes? And that is exactly what led to the Great Economic Depression in the year 1929 in the US. Is that clear, all of you? Is that clear, all of you? But before I tell you more about this, see, because of the success of the concept of mass production in cars, there were several other products that were mass produced. Like what? Refrigerators, you can read it here. I'll just highlight it. Refrigerators, washing machines. Yes, back in the 1920s also there were refrigerators, there were washing machines. Okay, and it was through loans, it was through EMI system that the people were purchasing. So the Great Economic Depression came and then it shattered the US economy. Obviously had impact across the world because the US was connected to the entire world. Even back then, a world economy had already taken shape. We just learned that a few minutes ago. Right, everybody? So the Great Economic Depression is a time of, now, if I have to explain in easy words what happens, so businesses shut down because of, and there is high unemployment. In simple words, this is what happens in Great Economic Depression. Clear? So now, how will India cope with this? In India, the prices of goods will drop down drastically. So a farmer who was earlier able to earn 100 rupees will now be able to earn maybe only 50 rupees or 60 rupees because there is a big demand supply gap. Correct? Supply is huge, but the demand is comparatively lesser. And this is the time when the civil disobedience movement was launched in India in 1931. Now, the First World War has happened. The effects of the First World War were, still affecting the countries. Somehow a recovery was aimed. The recovery could not actually fully take place because of the Great Economic Depression. You understood that cycle, right? And now, just about 2 decades after the First World War ended, the Second World War started. The First World War ended in 1918 and the Second World War started in 1939, right? So now we are talking about the Second World War and how after the Second World War there were two major countries that actually emerged as a very strong country. So first it was the US and second was the Soviet Union, or it was called the USSR, or in today's times it is Russia. Sorry for that. So clear everybody. Now how did they rebuild this world economy? The Second World War brought even more destruction as compared to the First World War. So post-war settlement. Now what they did is the Allied powers. You know that there were two powers fighting in the Second World War. In the First World War, it was Allied powers and Central powers. In the Second World War, it was the Allied powers and the Axis powers. So some of the Allied powers they met in 1944 in Bretton Woods, this area in the USA. Okay, and they understood that fight will not benefit any country, not even the winning countries. War will never benefit any country, not even the winning countries. So what they did is they decided to start two institutions there in the meeting. One is IMF and the other is IBRD. And the IBRD is popularly known as World Bank. Okay. Now what will these two institutions do? As the name of these two institutions suggests, first is the International Monetary Fund, IMF. International Monetary Fund. Okay. The second is International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Now, what reconstruction are we talking about? Here we are talking about the reconstruction of the economy after the Second World War. I hope it's clear. So they started, giving loans, but do you really think that the loans that these institutions will give or the financial assistance these institutions will give will be to the poor countries, extremely poor countries? Do you really think that way? Of course not. They helped only the developing and the developed countries. Okay. So clear till here, clear till here. I don't know. I'm so sorry. I have a very choked nose and not able to, breathe properly. So please accept my apologies. Okay. Now, early post-war years. Early post-war years means what? We are talking. See, the Second World War ended in 1945. So we are talking about the years just after the Second World War, but not 10, 15, 20 years after that. No, we're talking somewhere in the late 1940s, early 1950s. Clear? So, and now there was an era of growth. Slowly, technology and enterprise was spread worldwide. What is the meaning of enterprise? Businesses. Okay, gradually, then after the Second World War, there was a demand. See, as I told you, IMF and the World Bank, they only focused more to the developing countries or the developed countries. And for the poor countries or those countries like India who were looted for 200 years and now are kicked away like a very poor country, right? India became poor because of the colonial rule of 200 years, right? So such countries were never actually helped by the IMF and the World Bank, because the IMF and the World Bank will not gain anything by helping countries at that time which were very poor. Correct? So these developing countries, these poor countries, they made their own group. It's called G77, sorry, or it's called Group of 77. Now, today there are more than 130 countries in this group. It was initially started with these 77 countries. Okay, you can check the names, the list of the more than 130 countries on Google. You can check it. And they wanted to bring a new system, a new international economic order. Order here means a system. Okay, they want to bring, the objective of forming G77 or group of 77 was to bring about such a world, such an economic world internationally, that no country is dominated by the so-called winning countries, by the so-called powerful countries. Okay. So did you understand what is this G77? What is NIEO? The full form is given here already. New International Economic Order. And here order means system. Okay. Now, because of G77 or because of group of 77, what will happen now is that there will also be focus on the poor countries and the less developed countries. Clear, everybody? And finally, the dominance or the dadagiri of Bretton Woods institutions ended, and finally there was the beginning of fair globalization. Are you understanding how there was globalization even in the ancient times? Okay, congratulations, we've completed the chapter, but I have an extremely important announcement to make, which I will in just a few seconds. So the chapter is over. We'll just take 2 to 3 minutes more and not beyond that. So we understood all these topics. Of course, this is a one-shot revision, so there are constraints. I hope you also will understand. If you really want full syllabus explanation of these, then you should join my batches with Unacademy on the Unacademy app or the Unacademy website. You can access those batches after taking subscription. Okay, so we've completed. We've tried to throw some light on all these topics, and I hope, especially in this chapter and overall social science, you've gone from this to this. But you're a devil with that angelic halo, okay? And I'll give you a quick introduction. So if you've really benefited from this class, I request you to stay for 1 minute more. My name is Hardik Kheradia. I hope you remember the name. I teach social science. I'm a plus educator with Unacademy. I possess a master's degree in commerce and a bachelor's degree in management studies. My total experience is more than 15 years, out of which more than 2 years have been with Unacademy. And I'm so gratified that when I used to teach offline, I've traveled across the country. You can see all these cities that I've actually conducted one-to-one, offline classes. And with Unacademy, again, obviously I am traveling, no, but I'm still teaching across the country. And you all have given me immense love. And thank you for 12 million watch minutes. Thank you for a family of more than 26,000 people. And thank you for more than 2,000 hats. If you've really benefited from this class, I would strongly recommend you to go for the Unacademy subscription. You can go for the iconic subscription. That's what my recommendation is. Just give me a few seconds. Sorry, I have to plug in my charger. Apologies for this. Yes, finally the charger is plugged in. That was a real struggle. Sorry for that. Okay. If you've really benefited from my class, you can thank me by using my code HK26 for a flat 10% discount. You can also get extra discount using credits. How will you get credits? You can watch my free classes on Unacademy. You will accumulate a lot of credits and you can thank me later. Okay. And if you take 6 months or more of subscription, you can also go for a no cost EMI that will be available to you. And thank you so much for watching this class. Do check out the other chapters, one-shot revision that I've taken already on this very channel, and make sure you subscribe to this channel and press the bell icon I will see you all very soon in the next class with another such one shot revision. Thank you. Best wishes always. Take care. Tata.